Shalom, Gabe Greenberg here, Rabbi of Congregation Beth Israel in New Orleans, Louisiana, learning again with you this week the commentary of the Netziv on the weekly Torah portion. This week we are studying Parshat Shmot, Exodus chapter 1, verse 7, where we pick up in the narrative. The Israelites are in Egypt, Joseph has died, a new king or pharaoh is come to power, and we are learning in our verse the status, what's been going on with the Israelites. Uvenei Yisrael paru v'yishritzu v'yirbu v'ya'atzmu b'ma'od ma'od. The Israelites have been fruitful, and they've had many, many children, a swarming amount of children. They've grown, they've gotten bigger, they've strengthened themselves to a great degree. And the conclusion of the verse tells us, Vatimale haaretz otam, the land has filled up from them. The Netziv notes here that the final word in the verse, otam, should really say mayhem, meaning the phrase should read, the land filled up, or was filled up from them, meaning from the Israelites. There were so many Israelites that the land was filled up from them, from the amount of them. But rather it says otam, which seems to indicate grammatically a direct object, a transitive verb, but we don't see that in the verse. So what exactly is the meaning of that way of phrasing the word otam? The Netziv says that there's an additional meaning that the Torah is trying to teach us here. And he says as follows: Ba lilamed delo eretz Goshen levad shahaita miyuchedet l'Yisrael umalaya miyisrael levad. Don't think that the only place where the Israelites were living and were expanding was in the land of Goshen. Remember that in the end of Genesis, the Pharaoh and Jacob and Joseph had all said that the Israelites would live in a particular section, an area of the land of Egypt known as Goshen. And here the Netziv is telling us that is not what happened. Ella, rather, afilu kol eretz Mitzrayim, shahaita ikar yeshivat am Mitzrayim, rather the entire land of Egypt where the Egyptians, the ethnic Egyptians lived generally, mikol makom leah haaretz et Yisrael, that land as well had become filled up with Israelites. So this is not what we would have expected from the end of Genesis, where we thought that the Israelites lived in one particular area, pale of settlement type, shtetl living was just the Israelites. That is not what happened. Turns out the Israelites were living everywhere. V'hainu dichtiv b'makat bechorot, and we know that this is true because later in the narrative in chapter 12 of Exodus, we'll see during the 10 plagues that we see that Hashem had to pass over, Pasach Hashem ala petach, that by placing the blood on the lintel, you're familiar with the story, that the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, or God, whatever we understand was happening there, had to pass over Jewish homes. What does it mean, pass over them? Because there were an interspersing, an intermingling of Egyptian homes and Jewish homes. So that is a further indicates that the Jews were living amongst the Egyptians. Hare shahayu harbe batei Yisrael bekerev batei Mitzrayim. There were many Jewish homes amongst and in between the Egyptian homes. Now, the Netziv goes further, and he's going to draw an ethical message for us from this idea. Ba hakatuv lahakdim bezeh sibat sinat Mitzrayim ugizrat hamalchut. So the Netziv says this is all coming here to serve as a reason for why in the next verses in this first chapter in Exodus, we're going to see that the Egyptians were very fearful of the Israelites. What were the Israelites? What was their true motive? Were they going to turn into a fifth column and ultimately overwhelm the Egyptians in a war. And when the Egyptians were ultimately invaded, and really the Israelites just wanted to leave, and they would help destroy Egypt on the way out. Why is it that the Egyptians suspected us of this? Kol zeh, according to the Netziv, all of this, came mishum shebikshu letzeit miratzon Yaakov avihem, sheyeshvu davka be'eretz Goshen. All of this happened because the Israelites chose to dismiss the choice, the reasoning of Jacob, their father and grandfather, that all of the Israelites would live in one particular area in Eretz Goshen. Kidei shiyu badad v'nivdal mimitzrayim. Jacob and Joseph and Pharaoh had conceded to this, or agreed to this, that the Israelites would live separate and really secluded from the rest of Egypt. Aval hem lo ratzu kain. But the Israelites did not want this. And he brings here, the Netziv brings a midrash which speaks to a similar idea. Midrash is from Shmot Rabbah. It says as follows: Pasku lamul mizeh hatam sha'amru nihiyeh kimitzrayim. The midrash states that the Israelites at this time also had ceased circumcising their sons because they said, we want to be more like the Egyptians. Da'achar shekavu diratam bikirbam, as soon as they started living amongst the Egyptians, matzu tov lahem lihishtavot lemitzrayim v'lo yiyu nikarim shehema Yehudim. As soon as they started to live amongst them, they said, we want to be more like them. And we don't want to be identifiable anymore as Jews. And therefore, and then the Midrash goes on to say, it explains, Hafach Hashem libam lisno amo. That from that moment, God makes the Egyptians start to hate them. And when did all of this happen? Mishemet Yosef. From the moment Joseph died. Now what does it have to do that all the not circumcising started after Joseph died? Seemingly, the Netziv writes, Kol zman shahaya Yosef chai, as long as Joseph was living, lo hiniach le'edat Yisrael lador bekerav Mitzrayim. He did not let the Israelites integrate into Egyptian society, but as soon as he died, they were able to, and that's when they stopped circumcising, and that so too is when the Egyptians started to hate the Israelites. The Netziv concludes, Vihine nedono Yisrael b'mashachatu shebikshu litkarev v'yoter leMitzrayim. The Israelites were judged by God for wanting to integrate with the Egyptians. Al kain hita Hashem lev melech lachshov aleim shehem mevakshim letzeit min haaretz. So too, what our verse in Exodus 1:7 is saying is that God made it such that the heart of Pharaoh would think that the Israelites wanted to do the Egyptians harm, and that they would want to leave Egypt, and then adds the Netziv, V'chein hu ledorot bizman hagalut. And that will always be what happens during this exilic time. So that's a very dark conclusion from the Netziv. So let's think about what he's saying. It's a bold, kind of radical claim by the Netziv that the reason that the Egyptians distrust and despise the Israelites is because it stems from the fact that the Israelites wanted and tried to integrate into Egyptian society. And to the degree that they were successful in doing so, the better that the Israelites did at integrating, ironically and counterintuitively, God makes it such that the more the Israelites want to integrate and be part of Egyptian society is specifically when the Egyptians suspect that the Israelites actually want to do them harm and leave. As it says in the very next line, they believe that the Israelites are going to join a foreign army. V'nosaf gam hu al sonenu. The Israelites will join with our haters. V'nilcham banu. They'll fight us. V'ala mina aretz, and ultimately they'll leave. So it's a deep irony that the Netziv is claiming exists in Jewish history, that when we try to integrate and assimilate, to try to be part of the society, that whatever the ethnic majority is around us at the time will most start to suspect us then and actually believe that we wish to leave. Now, has this really been what's happened in Jewish history? I would say that this is not. I would say I'm suspect that this is exactly how things have happened, because of course there have been times when the Jews remained very much ghettoized and put in their own shtetl, and that did not stop the ethnic majorities that they were around from persecuting them, sometimes quite violently. So I don't think this is exactly how it works, but nevertheless, the Netziv here is arguing for a degree of separation for Jewish minorities to maintain their security and their integrity. This is a repeating theme for the Netziv. He makes a related comment in Numbers chapter 23 during Bilam's curse/blessing of the Jewish people on the verse Hen am levadad yishkon, that the Jewish people will be a nation that sit or that live separately. Of course, that is a verse which speaks much more explicitly to this idea. So hopefully we will get to learn that verse together at some point in the future. Thank you so much. Have a great week and Shabbat Shalom.